From our location in Sweet Spirits Hotel in Freetown, Sierra Leone, welcome to On the Spot with Stella, the show that brings you game changers, innovators, and pace setters who share inspirational stories, cultural, educational, and lifestyle issues affecting you and society. On this show, the spotlight is on you.
Welcome to the premiere of the first episode of On the Spot with me, Stella Bangura. I'm super excited kicking off this show with you as we discuss issues that matter to you. Tonight, along with my guest, we talk women in leadership and why we don't see many in Sierra Leone. Well, my first guest, Nikki Spencer-Coker, is a phenomenal woman who wears many hats. Now, she's a barrister and solicitor of the High Court of Sierra Leone, an MC, radio presenter at Capital Radio, Defense Counsel at the Sierra Leone Legal Aid Board, and an advocate for the empowerment of women and girls. It's great to have you, Nikki.
Thank you, Stella.
Well, also joining me is the 2018 Best Educationist Sister's Choice Award winner, Ariana Oluwole. She's the proprietress of Nanya Educational Group that caters for children between 0 to 3 years and aims to build a community where guardians and educators engage, learn, and grow together. It's also great having you, Ariana. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Now, coming back, while I did actually stumble on a recent study of 3,000 managers that concluded that women are better leaders than men. Well, it actually says that they are decidedly more suited to management positions than their male counterparts. So I'm going to start off with you, Nikki. If women, according to this study, are better leaders, do you agree with it?
Well, first I'm going to take you right back to one point that you made, Sal, which is that why we don't see many women leaders in Sierra Leone. And I actually think that's not true. The women in Sierra Leone make up about 52% of the population. And I would say actually that we have very many women in leadership positions in Sierra Leone. Perhaps we just have to qualify the type of leadership. If we're talking about maybe the corporate leadership, political leadership, then perhaps you have that is definitely true. We don't see that many women in that position. But back to your question, which is, whether or not we believe that women make better leaders than men. And as you mentioned the study, and lots of other studies have shown, people have done it in the corporate setting, in the management setting, that shows that women do make better leaders than men. And perhaps it has to do with the fact that women themselves, generally speaking, and we say generally because you always have somebody say, oh, it's not all women, and, but generally speaking, women are and live in a world in which we are a global patriarchy. And generally speaking, women are disadvantaged. And when you come from that position, as you then moving up the ladder, whether it's educationally or whether it's in business, whether then in leadership, because of your experience of having to navigate those waters, how do you make your point heard? How do you interact with in spaces where perhaps you're the only woman and it's mostly men and those sorts of things, that you find that their ways of communicating as women from that standpoint are different. Women tend to listen more, they're more effective communicators. And those are the kinds of things that when you're looking at leadership, that it's found, whether you're dealing with males or females, that make a better leader. Someone who listens more, who communicates more effectively, who's able to empathize with their employees better. Women, because of our social upbringing, tend to have that as part of us more so than men. And so you would then naturally see and believe, and it's proven, when you have these women then who are in these top management positions, that these end up being more effective leaders than their male counterparts. So I have my biases. Yeah. So, but yes, I would definitely agree that women would then make better leaders.
Okay, so she agrees that women make better leaders, just like the study, but she doesn't agree that there are few leaders or female leaders in Sierra Leone. Are you of the same opinion?
Oh yes, I am. I think going backwards, even my grandmother could be termed a female leader. But of course, because she wasn't in the corporate setting, neither was she educated in our sense of education, white collar education. So there's no study that covers her. Nobody met her or asked her such questions. But like Nikki so rightly said, I truly believe that women, we've been forced, based on our social and environment, to become resilient to such an extent that now they've been offered the opportunity to be right there in the corporate setting. We empathize better, we're emotionally intelligent, we get to handle situation a lot sensibly than men, probably because in the confines of our homes, over the years, over our evolution, we've gotten similar situations that we've been able to handle. I also feel that women, when they've been faced with working in the workplace, they tend to be a lot more encouraging. We have a mothering sense within ourselves. So it could be genetics that we get to listen in a bit more. We get to encourage our staff or team members a bit more. And that supports people in terms of pushing themselves and putting their best foot forward. So I do agree with the stats, and I do agree with Nikki on the fact that we do have a lot of women leaders, but maybe we needed on the spot with Stella to have come in a bit earlier so that we could shed light and just give them the chance to be heard and be listened to.
So then, do I then ask the question that is it that we have a lot of female leaders, but they are not given the opportunity to actually lead? I mean, if you look around, if you look in the corporate, in the business, even in the political arena, we don't see a lot of women at the top.
It seems to be a very topical question given our recent election and the ongoing appointments of by our president to various positions of leadership, whether it's the cabinet, deputy ministry positions, institutions that we've seen them coming out right now. And in terms of politics and women in leadership, in that sense, in terms of the appointments, it doesn't look very encouraging. But I think that it presents a false picture. In politics, there are lots of things which are going on. Somebody made a statement just recently, a male colleague, in which he said that women shouldn't be upset or surprised about the fact that not so many of them are being appointed to these various positions, because when in politics, when the people who are being appointed, a lot of them, it's the reward for their good service, for their commitment and their loyalty. And at that stage, there weren't that many women who would have been willing to put their financial and personal selves at risk.
Okay, I'm going to hold you on that, and we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back, and we'll take it from where we talk about, talk a little bit about politics. Here's a break, we'll be back. Welcome back. This is On The Spot on AYV Television. Well, tonight we're talking women in leadership. Now, you went actually talking a little bit about politics there, and probably the false representation it gives that women are not, they're not probably leadership materials, if I may put it that way.
Well, I mean, and maybe that's what it's saying, that certain people think that women are not. It's not that women are not leadership material. Maybe it gives the impression that women either don't want to be in the leadership position, or they're not available, or they're not enough, or they're not qualified. All of which is not true. Okay. All of which is not true. So, in the political sense, Stella, I mean, I think I've had to do that now, is that in the political sense, you sort of have to separate what you're seeing from the reality, because you know that in politics there are other issues that play other than the availability of competent women for these positions, because they are there. And furthermore, various institutions have even now gone so far as specifically 50-50, as to put together directories of women to so that no one could come forward to say, we don't know where they are. We don't know who they are. Well, here's a directory of women with all their bios and their CVs in various sectors
And
that
the
you can come and have a
qualifications,
look at.
everything.
So let's put the politics aside and come back to, which is, I guess, the nitty-gritty question as to, why aren't there these women in leadership positions? We've already
now
said.
I'm going to help you because I actually did stumble on another article, and it's actually titled "America Loves Women Like Hillary Clinton, as long as they are not asking for a promotion." Now, it cites a 2011 study that found that men are 4 times more likely than women to ask for a raise. They are also women are much more likely than men to underestimate their abilities, and therefore will refuse to apply for a job unless they are certain they have 100% qualifications. And let's take into consideration here that men actually just probably have about 60%, and then they're ready to go for it. So basically, this article reveals that, there are quite a lot of challenges that women go through. If you look at Hillary Clinton, a lot of people will think she's got a lot and probably have all the support. But it just tells you that maybe there's a different story to this whole theme that we see, whereby women are not probably given the opportunity.
I believe, like in the case of Sierra Leone, women are really pushing forward now, and the data is out there. But it's really about where we find ourselves, people not allowing us to take up those opportunities because they are used to the status quo. And for most occasions in the past, most women would not even venture into certain positions because they thought it was fine being the secretary to the MD, it was fine being the project manager, but they wouldn't want to be in the limelight. I think a lot of times these women, not because they don't have the qualification, but because they have other inhibiting factors. Sometimes women, you fall pregnant right in the middle of work, and you have to take time off work, and that deters your progress. In politics, perhaps, we all know it gets dirty to some extent, and some women put their homes and other factors right up there in terms of value. So I don't want my husband to be tainted, perhaps. I don't want my children to be at risk going to school every day, because if I say the wrong things, I would hurt political party X or Y. So sometimes they do start and they're building up, they pursuit up the ladder, they get to where they want to be, and they look down and there's like all of these other factors pulling them down. And at the end of the day, the other women, being the bystanders, standards, they look at this woman and they see how they get to fall right there at the edge of their dreams. And this is discouraging for most people, because you don't want to be right there and then you have to crash, you come down. While as for the men, most times they have the do or die mentality. I'll do this and I care less how my image looks. For us, it boils down, it really goes down from self-esteem issues, from what we've been raised. For example, your mother always, they tell you, you have to act a certain way, you have to behave in a certain way. And they don't do that to the boys. So most women do listen to these voices, and that deters their growth. So sometimes you do have the qualifications, sometimes you're offered the position, and then you go back home and your partner says, no, how can you be MD and I am a security officer?
Now, but you did mention something about, women feeling comfortable being probably the PA to the boss, as opposed to probably being the boss because not because they don't have the qualifications, but probably they are not confident enough to ask for it. So now, do you think that is what is holding a lot of women back?
Well, Yes, I think the confidence issues hold back a lot of women, and then not being tagged as overly confident. Perhaps us seated here, we've been stereotyped as being bossy, fussy, just because you're speaking up your mind, you have a voice, you have a comment to make for every issue, because people expect that that's a man's world, that's a man's issue.
But if people expect that, women, are we actually helping to fan that stereotypical beliefs or views about who we are as women, given the fact that if you look at the businesses around, you don't see a lot of women in Sierra Leone stepping out of the norm. You'd see the women will play it safe, probably get a provision store, probably be probably going to tailoring or fashion. But there are other amazing fields that women can delve into, probably into oil, into agriculture, into probably aviation, whatever the case may be. But women, we play it safe. So aren't we as well contributing to this opinion that is, being held by the society, Nikki?
The debate is interesting because at the end of the day, what we all have to recognize is all connected. It doesn't happen, nothing happens in isolation. The fact that a woman, even myself, and I've experienced that, as you might see, as enlightened as you are, as empowered as you are, but when it comes to dollars and cents, talking about your money, putting a value up for yourself, the person who does that for me happens to be my husband, who will say, oh, no, you got to get paid for that. Oh, no, you need to ask for this. Oh, no. Why aren't you the boss here? Why aren't you? Because it doesn't happen in isolation. Why these women supposedly don't seem to be self-confident? It's all socialization, how we're brought up, what we're taught, what we learn from being a baby to growing up. And you find that if you are to be a woman in the forefront, that you have to fight against a lot of those to be successful. It's not that you want to be a man. In Sierra Leone, I fight with some things because for most times I'm thinking that Sierra Leone doesn't like women. That's how it acts sometimes. It doesn't like women. I don't mean they hates us, they don't want to see us alive, or they don't want their wives, their daughters, and their girlfriends, their concubines, their side chicks, and everything else. I mean that they want us to look pretty and be in the spaces you're in. But when you come to the point where you have a voice, you have an opinion, you disagree, you're loud, then no, we're not interested in you. No, you in a way, in fact, you see it in the political arena, in the fact that women who go into politics are disrespected, abused, derided. Generally, all sorts of things will be heaped onto them because they're basically told, well, you've come into the man's world and this is what you should expect. So basic decency somehow goes out the window.
Okay.
And so you're not supposed to lose that just because you go into a particular field. And you find quietly, Stella, that especially maybe a lot of the young women coming up who are going through the university system now, that a lot of them are branching into entrepreneurial fields in very unexpected places that perhaps our mothers and even ourselves, our generation, perhaps wouldn't have thought about going into. You're mentioning fields which are perhaps not so common, aviation. Well, how many men go into that? I really didn't say any men do it. But I'm just saying. So you find that they're in quiet, isolated spots. What we're trying to do, I suppose, in this conversation that you're raising, is get to the point where it's not isolated. That these women who get into these positions are not seen as other. Okay. There's a book I read very many years ago. You should get it.
Okay.
It's called The Second Shift.
The Second Shift. Well, we're going to come back to that real quick. But now coming up next is our video of the week. And, we're going to talk a little bit about the video and see if you do agree with what the video says.
Sure.
Minute MBA, Why Women Make Better Business Leaders. A Harvard Business Review study showed that a business group's collective IQ went up when there were women on the team. And yet, only 12 of the Fortune 500 companies are run by women. So what are the other 488 missing out on? Communication. Firms with more women on their boards have 42% higher sales returns, 66% higher return on invested capital, and 53% higher return on equity. Take Yahoo's new CEO, Marissa Mayer, who laid out a strategic outline for the declining company and watched the stock gain 5.7%, closing at $16.67, its highest level in over a year. These success rates are often linked to superior communication skills. Studies show while women speak fewer words in a day than men, they actually have a better command of the language for getting their point across. Initiative. In a study by Harvard Business Review, women in management were rated 11.58 percentile points above their male peers at taking initiative in the workplace. Indra Nooyi, CEO of PepsiCo, forged ahead with a plan to focus on more nutritious drinks despite criticism. It's a risk that could turn a $10 billion business into $30 billion in just 10 years. Emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman, author of The Brain and Emotional Intelligence, New Insights, states that truly effective leadership is distinguished by a high degree of emotional intelligence. And according to Goleman, women on average outdo men when it comes to sensing a person's feelings in the moment. Meg Whitman, former CEO of eBay and current CEO of HP, was featured in Psychology Today for leading with emotional intelligence. Under her 8-year reign, eBay was the fastest growing company in history. In her book, The Power of Many, she writes, "I believe that being willing and able to actively listen is a vital skill for any leader. Not only is listening the right thing to do, an antidote to arrogance, it also leads to all sorts of competitive advantages."
All right, now you both have watched the video. It basically talks about or highlights the distinguishing traits of women and their leadership characteristics or traits or strength, if you want to call it that. Do you think it resonates? Do you think that is true? Is it really the quality women have?
It talks about various things that perhaps are specific to women leaders. I think Ariana mentioned some of that earlier. Emotional intelligence, communication skills, ability to empathize with the employees, the ability to work well in teams. I mean, that's not saying that men don't, exhibit the best of male leaders, don't exhibit those same sorts of characteristics. But I think what it's trying to get us all to recognize is that probably based on our histories and socializations, that women, especially when they get to those top leadership positions, perhaps they're forced to rely on those skills more because there's so much people, you don't expect them to be there anyway. They're thinking that they're gonna, you already come into a situation where perhaps it's antagonistic. Mm-hmm. So you're already thinking in your mind, okay, well, how am I going to play this to ensure that people are not threatened by me as a woman in this position? Now in Sierra Leone, there's a flip side to the conversation because, you hear all the time people say that women don't make good managers, they don't make good leaders in Sierra Leone, especially when they're dealing with other women. If it's a competition issue or it's just a fear of their own position issue. But I think that you have to separate. They're always like those types, but you have to separate the person, and I'm going to be generic then. The person who genuinely and legitimately comes to their position versus somebody who's placed there for whatever reasons, be it political, be it cosmetic, just to have it look good, So you have to separate those scenarios, and I think we're seeing so many of those that if we're all now honest with ourselves and evaluating how we can get more women into leadership positions to reflect the population of the country in which we are in which we have a majority of women. 52% of the population, yes, according to our census, but nobody counted you when it came around. But 52% of the population apparently, and maybe it'll be more as we go forward in years to come, that it should be reflected in our life that we see every day, in our politics, in our education, in our business. It should be reflected. It's reflected in our social, yes. The majority of women earning a living, daily bread for their families, taking care of their families, and is probably the majority of women. The master farmers, I don't remember the lady's name, we talked about farmers, it's a woman,
Yes.
So She's not the only one, but they're there. So all the traders that we see in the street who are taking care of their families, putting their children through school, from selling at Crutan Road or selling fish, and I have personal examples of women who do this. That's what they do on a daily basis, and their children have all gone through the universities without any help from the husband or partner who's there. Well, these women, is it because they're not capable of being in leadership positions? No.
And Ariana?
Yeah, Nikki rightly mentioned that you have women. I know a woman that's put her children through school, through universities outside of Sierra Leone, and she trades in fish. There's another one currently that I know. She does coal, and she's been able to get her children right through primary school. They're now both in secondary school. So those women are women that if they had the enabling environment, would do equally better in, let's say, a corporate position. Women that would be able to champion causes for their communities in the political arena. But like Nikki said, for our own situation in Sierra Leone, most women that are being catapulted to these positions do not really go through the ranks. They get there and they don't know what to expect. So it takes a while for even their innate qualities, which I think were highlighted in the video, to come out. Because a woman that has gone through a certain process is automatic. It's automatic within you for you to respond to a certain situation, and these positions equally, they do not create the opportunity for people to learn and grow with it. Most times people just expect, it's a man and it's a woman, and because it's a woman, it should look like this. Forgetting the most important bit of it all is us being human. And this is why most times I preach gender parity, because the different sexes, we all have pluses and we all have minuses. Enhancing the pluses to suit our various positions.
Now that you've mentioned that, I'm going to hold you there. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. This is, of course, On the Spot. Welcome back to On the Spot. Tonight we are talking women in leadership, and I've got with me Nikki Spencer-Coker and Ariana Oluwole. Now, looking at the article, we're talking about women and the fact that women are better leaders. But you mentioned something here about equity, and that just kind of reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend who said in Sierra Leone, the women are having the wrong conversation and they are requesting for the wrong thing, which is, it is not equality, but it should be equity. Equality in the sense that what women are saying is, we are like men and we want to equally get everything the men are having, as opposed to asking for equity, being that we are women, this is where we are, but we want you men to help us get up to where you are. So should that be the conversation we should be having?
Actually, I don't think so. I'm not even sure we should be. I think what people misinterpret about 50-50 is not equality. Okay, let's say, for example, or say for factually, men and women created equally. Okay. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. Now I sound like I'm about to give you a sermon. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. Yes. It's not about I want to be a man. I don't want to be a man. There's nothing about a man that I want to be like. I love my husband and I totally am happy that he is totally different from me, top to bottom. Great. I want equal opportunities so that if I have the same educational opportunity as yourself, I have the opportunity to go as far as I want to go in my chosen field, recognizing the unique situations that pertain to my own gender. For example, that I'm not penalized when I go and I get pregnant and have to take time off work to go and have my child because I'm a woman. Well, so I mean, that means you don't want me to work in this field. You say, oh, well, we're not going to give you a promotion because she's going to get pregnant. No, I want it to be recognized within the workspace, be you man or woman, that a woman is going to get pregnant. So I've gone so far in my career, and there has to be some time off that I have to take. Yes, the work has to go forward, but when I come back, which I will come back, first give me the space off to do what I need to do in my maternity leave. Allow me to come back, and do not penalize me for that, as in say, well, you're not going to get a promotion, we're not going to promote you because this is what happened. Because what you find that happens in those societies that recognize that and give and allow women the lack of stress to be able to do that they're very productive. If you allow the woman to have a co-share arrangement or to be working from home to a certain extent, you find that she's very productive. They want to work, they love their jobs, they want to contribute. But if we don't have that recognition, that equal opportunity space, that recognition of the fact that women are different, then you will have these kind of struggles.
Then I'm going to come to you, Ariana, because you did mention enabling environment.
Yes.
And now Nikki has just kind of just explained a little bit about that. So what's the reality women have to face with here in Sierra Leone?
Excuse me, men, we work twice as hard to prove the very same point. A woman goes to work 8:30 to 5:30 and expected to be back at home, cook dinner, take the kids to bed, get up in the morning again, fix lunches. That's like, we're talking about superhuman there.
That's that second shift I was talking to you about.
Yes.
I mentioned that. I knew we were going to come back to that point.
Second shift.
And you're expected to be up bright and early, being super nice to the staff, forgetting that you barely could sleep because you had the other responsibilities to fulfill. And that takes you up all night.
That's very life.
But that's the truth of the matter. Whilst I'm a typical man in the male sense, forgive me, my husband who helps me out a lot, would go have a chat with the boys, cool down, go home.
Have a beer.
Yes.
With the friends.
Have dinner and go on snoring, turn to you at some point and needs certain cuddling to be done. But on a more serious note,
that wasn't serious? That sounded very serious to me.
These are not enabling. These are not equal opportunities. Let's take, for instance, a simple period. You show up late because you've been having cramps the whole morning, and you called in stating that I'm having like serious cramps, I'll be running late, and before you know it, it's a whole issue at the board meeting. Why is it that you're always late?
Every month you're
because
late.
Every month I get to go through this.
Well, of course, you're watching On the Spot with me, Stella Bangura. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back from our location at Sweet Spirit Hotel. You're watching On the Spot on AYV Television. Tonight I've got Nikki Spencer-Coker and Ariana Oluwale speaking to me about, what they think about women in leadership in Sierra Leone. So as we talk about women in leadership, a lot of people will think this is more the older folks. But how about the younger ones, the ladies that are coming up? Do you think they are being prepared better to take up leadership roles, Ariana?
Yes, I do. Because our children learn a bit more by example. They have a lot more role models in the corporate scene. They see people like Antoniki on television and hear her on radio very often. So they have people to aspire to be like.
I hear this a lot. In Sierra Leone, we lack mentors. What you see mostly are what I'll probably say political mentors, maybe from the political fields, but in other fields or other aspect. We have very few mentors. So when you say mentor, I'm trying to. Do you think that's the case?
I don't think so recently. I feel like people have been a bit more reserved in terms of sharing their light, sharing
Well, that's
information
it.
about.
But that's it. So there we do lack
Yes.
mentors.
So
We don't. We lack mentors. I mean, let's start with mentors.
So, okay, well,
You know.
at a certain level, of course, we do lack mentors. But for the school-going children, they see a lot of people. You are mentoring a lot of people from afar. The conversation is, for me, how accommodating are we? Are we really taking up the mentoring role? Or are we just inspiring from where we are?
Well, you see, Irene, that's the only part for me I disagree a little bit because I think we are seeing quite a lot of different types of role models, people to aspire to, who inspire us. For young women and young men coming up as well. But mentoring itself is a dedicated. It's intentional. And it's a difficult thing to both be a mentor and to be a mentee. It's actually, it's not just, oh, I like what you're doing, so, it's not like that. Mentoring, if you look at situations in which people have effectively mentored others, it's a very conscious, focused relationship. Both parties need to know what they're wanting out of it. Sometimes in our setting, the potential mentee who's coming to you is looking for, it's not really a genuine relationship. They're looking for a way to get in for something, to get something, to then move on. And then perhaps those who are potential mentors are not quite sure what it is you're supposed to dedicate and how much time it takes actually to be somebody who's in a mentor role to somebody else. There have to be lots of alignments. It's, I think for me, it has to be something where it's somebody, your roles, your fields that you want to go into are similar. You're looking at this person, you're bringing them through on a life's journey. So mentors, we don't have a lot of mentors. Traditionally, males have a lot more mentors. They've had a lot more practice at it. They have a lot more examples of people who are in those specific roles who then can bring somebody along. And in our generations, lots of times now, the women who might be mentors, who we might mentor, are just potentially now getting into these positions and now also solidifying their own positions. So then to also expend that energy to reach out, to bring somebody along might take some work and adjustment, but it's very important. We see that how successful people are in their fields when they have people who effectively mentor them, who show them the ropes, who make the contacts and the connections, and who you can go to be your accountability partner to say, okay, well, this is what you're doing right now. It's not really going to work. This is how you that sort of thing. We don't have that. I have not had that in my own life.
Well, from my experience, maybe because I'm outside looking in, I don't feel the men have like a specific plan or model that they use, or they don't really have intention. I feel it's more of an apprenticeship setup that they have. So a man is doing great at his career. He doesn't feel competitive. He doesn't feel that me pulling along my brother's child or the little boy from the neighborhood is going to interfere with my goals. So they meet at football matches, they watch football together, they hang out in the same space, and the boys actually emulate.
Does that then kind of give credence to the saying that women don't support women?
No. All I am saying at this point, because I experienced a lot of women that have been supporting me. My being here is because a woman is supporting what I do. So I'm just highlighting the fact that I feel that there are a lot of role models in terms of men mentoring other men, because they're not as complex as we are. Just how we're made, it's a DNA. So a woman would want to know what the intention is. A man.
I always dispute this. Where somehow this in our DNA is genetic, blah blah. No. Yeah, there's some things which are genetic. Yes, there's some things which are genetic, but that particular aspect, it's learned behavior. It's not DNA. It's not genetics. They have had more experience at it than us. That's just reality. So it's not in their DNA. They're not better at nothing. It's basically it's socialization, what they've learned. And so if we don't have the opportunity to learn it too.
So now we're talking about men having had the opportunity to learn certain things more than women.
Yeah.
So still coming back again to women, the leadership roles we play, how it is in Sierra Leone. So would you then agree that we don't have a lot of women at the top, be it in business, be it in politics, or probably even in the corporate world?
Let's talk about statistics then specifically, because the Corporate Affairs Commission recently did a study in which they looked at a certain number of companies, I think about between 60 and 100 companies, and they were looking at how many women directors there were, how many shareholders, how many directors. I think it was directors, shareholders, and then CEOs. They looked at as well, and the percentage is pretty much the same between directors and shareholders of these various companies. It's something like between 72 to 77% male versus between 26 to 30% female. So if you look at that, yes, there's a huge difference between, you're talking about not just the corporate field, you're talking about companies, between the heads of these companies and those who, not just the heads, but the owners of the companies who are the shareholders. And the majority in Sierra Leone are men. And it's not just like a little disparity, it's a great disparity. So based on that, in the corporate world, yes, women, not that many. But we already talked about leadership not just being about women in the corporate world and politics. So it's evolving.
Okay.
I think that's the situation that we're in. We are evolving.
We are evolving. Okay, well, my guests believe that women are evolving. Hopefully evolving into the leadership roles and probably one day become the next president in Sierra Leone. We're all optimistic, aren't we?
The next
president?
When are we going to elections next? 2023? Are women ready to be president in Sierra Leone? Yes.
That is the question I'm also going to be leaving my viewers with.
Yes.
But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back. And of course, my guests will be leaving us with 3 things. Take care. Welcome back. I'm right here at Swiss Spirit Hotel. If you are just joining, well, you've missed quite a lot, but you're just in a nick of time to catch my guest leave us with 3 profound things, which I believe you would find quite interesting. So over to you both now. What are the 3 things you would love to leave with me and my audience? Ariana?
Oh, well, I'll start with one. I would love to see a Sierra Leone where women would care less about what other people thought about them. Number 1. Number 2, a Sierra Leone where women seek knowledge and they also practice, good practice that is, what they learn in every sphere of their life, from the home to the office to the State House.
To the State House. Yes, I think that's just supporting female president.
And lastly, I would love to see an environment that is more understanding of us being humans and accommodating of our human rights as they would do for a man.
Wow. Thank you. Nikki?
I'd like to see a better educated Sierra Leone. So our new president and his government is emphasizing education. And so I'd like to see a better educated Sierra Leone because that's the foundation for everything, be you male or female. And I'd like to see that education focused on males, our men, and in terms of what feminism means. I think what the conversation has spent a lot of time on women, but I think that we will not progress as a society where we want to be as men and women until men themselves understand what it is we're talking about. And so thirdly, I'd like for women in Sierra Leone to understand that feminism is not a bad word.
Yes, it is not a bad word.
That's where those are my 3 things.
3 things. Thank you so much for joining me here on the spot. You both have made the conversation quite interesting, and I'm quite certain that my audience, viewers and listeners as well, have picked quite a lot today, or tonight rather. So thank you. I'm definitely going to have to bring you both back at some point in time. So have a very beautiful evening. Of course, you are still watching On the Spot. But as we round up, here are my final words. In my final words, climbing to the top is never easy. But as women, there are particular challenges that make the climb to the positions of power and influence more challenging. Whether we're changing the narratives or following the steps of those who've gone ahead, we must never give up. Michelle Obama says no country can ever truly flourish if it stifles the potential of its women and deprives itself of the contributions of half its citizens. It is therefore a call to all, including our government, to champion the empowerment of our women. Thanks for watching, but the show continues online, and we'd love to have you join the conversation. Have your say by dropping your comments on tonight's discussion on our Facebook page, On the Spot with Stella. Drop by a Sweet Spirit Hotel this Sunday for the special Sweet's Sunday brunch from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Also catch a repeat of the show later on in the week. But until next week, when we'll be back, stay fabulous.